So we're going to begin tonight's drash a little bit in an unorthodox way. We're going to actually start with a pop quiz, but I promise this is not going to be terrible. Nobody's going to have any anxiety dreams about coming to shul. This is just going to be, just two questions. The first one's multiple choice, okay? Every Pesach, this is the question, every Pesach, every Passover, we drink 4 cups of wine at the Seder. So why 4 cups of wine? Ready? A, because Manischewitz made this ritual up as a way to sell more of their wine. B, that's the exact amount of wine it takes to get Uncle Schmendrick to tell the good stories about Grandpa. C, we drink 1 cup of wine for all of the 4 questions. Or D, I have no idea, Rabbi, but I'm sure you're about to tell me it ties to this week's Torah portion. All right, shout out what you think it is. D, yes, you're right, it is D. The reason for the 4 cups of wine comes straight from this week's Torah portion. God, in the Torah this week, makes 4 promises of liberation to the Israelite people, using 4 different Hebrew verbs in each promise. And these become the basis for the 4 cups of wine. Each cup is supposed to remind us of these promises. So the first one is Hotzeti, I will free you. The second is Hitzalti, I will deliver you. The third is Ga'alti, I will redeem you. And the 4th Hebrew verb is Lakachti, I will take you. Now we're going to learn how to conjugate those verbs. I'm just kidding. Now, at first glance, they all appear very similar, but one of the Jewish views of Torah is if it could be said once, but Torah says it 4 times, there's something important to be learned in each of those 4 iterations. So our second question has to be, and this is also multiple choice, which is the most significant promise? Is it A, the first one, Hotzeti, B, the second, Hitzalti, C, the third one, Ga'alti, or D, the 4th one, Lakachti? Who says A, the first one? Let's see hands. 1 person, 2, 3, okay. B, the second? No one? Okay. If you think it's the 3rd one, Ga'alti, we'll see hands. All right. And D, Lakachti, we'll see hands. Lots of people on the last. So the answer, it's a trick question. They're all very important. And that being said, we're going to focus on the 3rd one, Ga'alti. I will redeem you. So one of the great rabbinic minds of the 19th century, Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch, basically notes that this 3rd promise that begins Ga'alti, I will redeem you, is really exceptional. And it's exceptional because of that Hebrew word, Ga'alti. Why is that so important? Well, Hirsch reminds us that this Hebrew word is used elsewhere in the Torah to describe a family member who comes to the aid of their relative. You see, in Torah, there are several laws about our responsibility to our kin. If our family members are in trouble, we have an obligation to respond, to defend them, to be their help. And this isn't something we can do if we're feeling nice. This is something that we are commanded to do. We have to do it. And this role has a title. It's called a Goel, which sounds like Ga'alti. You can hear the similarity in words. A Goel, which is often translated as a redeemer or a redeeming kinsman. A Goel was not just someone who was saddened or disturbed by another person's suffering. A Goel was required to respond to their family's suffering, to actually take action. For example, the Torah tells us, if your relative becomes so poor that they have to sell themselves into slavery, you as a Goel have to go free them. If your relative becomes so poor they have to sell their land to sustain themselves, you as a Goel have to go help them reclaim their land. So when God promises to the Israelites, Ga'alti, I will redeem you, we should immediately link this promise to all the other times in Torah when God commands us to act as a Goel. Because when God says, I will redeem you, Ga'alti, the divine is actually taking on the role of a Goel for the entire Israelite people. And suddenly, this is not just a promise like any of the others, because in doing so, God becomes our relative, our family, a being who is responsible to us and beholden to help us. In fact, Hirsch, in explaining this, puts these words into the mouth of the Holy One as God speaks to Israel. God says to them, "You do not have one kindred soul in Egypt who would feel personally hurt by the abuses to which you are being subjected. And therefore I will stand up as your kinsman. I am hurt," God says, "whenever one of my children is hurt." And this is a radical statement, that those who are alone, who need help, who have no advocate at all, I speak for them, God says. They are my kin. It's a radical revolution in the history of faith, because all around the ancient Near East, gods were at best indifferent to humanity and at worst capricious. But here, in Torah, we have a God who loves humanity so much that God is willing to take on the role of family, to be bound to human suffering and need by bonds of obligation and commandedness. But we who are living today face a problem. In our story, God takes on the role of the Goel and intervenes to free the Israelites. But this is not our experience of God or of the world. We live in a world without plagues or burning bushes or splitting seas. None of us are going to receive a prophetic call. Instead, we have this ancient text, and in its words, we find echoes of truth and a voice that calls us to be better than our own nature. Because we know that today, all around us, are people without a Goel, without anyone who feels personally hurt by the abuses to which they are subjected, and who is also obliged to do something to ameliorate that suffering. And yet, in this one verse of Torah, God models for us an expectation. We Jews, having found freedom, having been redeemed, must see those who are still oppressed, still vulnerable, still voiceless as kin. Their hurt must be our hurt. Their plight, our plight. Their need, our need. We might look around and see the countless among us who are alone and abandoned, suffering and subjugated, mistreated and maligned, and say, as God once did, "You do not have one kindred soul in this land who feels personally hurt by the abuses to which you are being subjected. And therefore we will stand up as your kinsmen. We are hurt whenever any child of God is hurt." Such is the enduring and eternal mission of our people, Israel.